Thank you. So good afternoon again for those who are in Asia. Good morning and also good evening to everyone. So we have attendees from all over the world, and we thank you for making your time to attend this important webinar on advancing children's environmental rights. And I'm Chinky. I'm Chinky Golye, and I'm joining you from the Philippines. I work as regional coordinator of IPEN for Southeast and East Asia. And for those who are not familiar of IPEN, so IPEN is International Pollutants Elimination Network. So we are a global network of public interest organizations working for a toxics-free society and future for all. So our member organizations are present in 129 countries. Every June 4th or 5th, we celebrate the World Environment Day. While here in the Philippines, where I am from, June is we celebrate June as Environment Month in the Philippines, and for all of us, I think what a better way to celebrate this environmental protection or advocacy is to highlight the importance of protecting our environment, not to also protect the right of the children to a healthy environment. So before we proceed, just a few reminders. So we are recording this webinar, and a link to the recording will be shared to all the participants. We might also be posting it to the IPEN YouTube, and we will share with you the link of the recording later. For our Q&A later, so you may use the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen for your questions. And also, we will have a very short survey after the webinar, so to help us also improve our webinar management. So that's all. And to formally welcome us to this webinar, let me share the video message from Manik Alonso. He is a campaigner in the Eco Waste Coalition Philippines. So
A very good day to everyone. I would like to start off by thanking you for joining our webinar today. I would also like to record my profound thanks to our co-organizers for coming together to bring you this event dedicated to understanding and promoting children's environmental rights. We thank the Child Rights Coalition Asia for collaborating with IPEN Southeast and East Asia and its participating organizations from Indonesia and the Philippines, namely the Indonesia Center for Environmental Law, Nexus 3 Foundation, and the Eco Waste Coalition for this timely undertaking. In the next 1.5 hours, we'll be hearing from a distinguished panel of leaders led by Ms. Amihan Abweba of CRC Asia, who in 2023 received the Asia Democracy and Human Rights Award. Belated congratulations, Amihan. This webinar, we hope, will contribute to a deeper appreciation of the need to promote and advance the human right of all children to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. As children are not little adults, it is important for our society, especially the duty bearers, to protect children from the moment they are conceived and throughout their development from all environmental hazards that can block their potential to fully grow and succeed. These hazards, which can threaten children's health and safety, may be biological in nature. For example, E. coli and Salmonella in food. Chemical, for example, lead in paint and other sources of childhood lead exposure, or endocrine disrupting chemicals like phthalates in plastic toys. Physical, for example, intense heat due to El Nino, or extreme rainfall and flooding due to La Nina, or psychosocial, for example, bullying, gender inequality, racism, and poverty. After the webinar, We hope that all of us will have a richer understanding of the environmental rights of children, including babies in the womb, amid the interlinked global challenges that we face, such as climate change, pollution, and biodiversity loss, and what we can do to protect and advance such rights. Thank you very much for being here and have a very meaningful webinar. Maraming salamat po.
Thank you so much, Sir Manny, for giving the welcome remarks. And before before we proceed, just again, reminders that we're recording this, and for Q&A, please use the Q&A chat box at the bottom of your screen later, and also kindly answer the webinar survey at the end of this webinar. So as mentioned, we are very fortunate and honored to be organizing or to organize this important webinar on advancing children's environmental rights with Children's Rights Coalition Asia, with Eco Waste Coalition, with Indonesian Center for Environmental Law, with Nexus 3 Foundation. We are very happy, we are honored and grateful that um, you agreed to or co-organize this webinar. And we are also grateful that we have an excellent lineup of speakers that are with us this afternoon. So as mentioned, the main goal of this webinar is to contribute to the increased awareness and understanding of citizens on children's environmental rights, and gather insights and reflections on how civil society organizations can help advance their rights. And then we aim also to discuss the fundamental environmental rights of children, share important policies protecting children's rights to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment, share insights and reflections, and also campaigns related initiatives promoting children's environmental rights. And maybe we can also, at the end of this webinar, we can also discuss some ways forward on how we can also advance further the campaigns on environmental rights of children. So for our program this afternoon, we have invited our excellent lineup of speakers. But before that, let us hear from, because this webinar is about children's rights. So we invited an excellent representative from the children and youth to share with us her work in protecting the environment. And we are excited to hear from her. And let us welcome, so I'm gonna just pull out the slides. So let us welcome our keynote speaker for this afternoon. She is Nina Asara Akilani. We call her Nina. She is a young Indonesian environmental activist whose main concern is to stop the transport of rubbish from Europe to her home country and other countries in the global south. She is often been referred to in the media as the Indonesian Greta Thunberg. And especially in times of the pandemic, when plastic consumption and the associated littering of our environment are exploding, Nina never tires of starting media effective campaigns over and over again. And as a very young environmental activist, Nina was invited to speak at the Plastic Health Summit in Amsterdam. She is advocating for a clean, safe, healthy, and sustainable world and fight against illegal imports of plastic waste from industrialized countries to her native country, Indonesia. And the plastic with mixed with legal paper waste and then disposed of in Indonesia without control and regardless of the ecological catastrophic consequences. And among other things, this contaminates the river where Nina is also living. So everyone, let us welcome our keynote speaker, Ashanina Asara Akilani, or we call her Nina. Hello, Nina. How are you?
Hello, I'm great.
Thank you so much for joining us. So, yes, so please go ahead with your presentation.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity. Thank you so much for inviting me. So today we gather to discuss about aspect of human rights, children's ecological rights as we reflect on the future of our planet. It becomes increasingly clear that safeguarding these rights is not just a moral imperative but a necessity for the well-being of current and me as the future generation and all of the young people around the world. Next slide, please. So children's ecological rights encompass their entitlement to a safe and healthy environment in which to grow, learn, and thrive. This includes access to clean water, clean air, and nutritious foods, as well as protection from environmental hazards such as pollution, climate change impacts, and habitat destruction. Every child deserves these basic rights regardless of their geographical location or economic status. So I wrote letter to Donald Trump, to Chancellor of Germany, to Prime Minister of Canada. I asked them all to stop sending their plastic waste to my country, to Indonesia, and to recycle their own waste in their own country. Okay. And then I also educate my friends. I did like a school exhibition about the important plastic waste so that my friend can understand the truth that our country Indonesia and other developing countries like Malaysia, Thailand, Africa, and a lot of uh, Asian countries, we became a dumping ground for the developed countries. So in the whole plastic life cycle, it's already polluting our food chain, polluting our health and our environment. So that's why I'm really focusing on this issue. I really want my generation to live in a safe, clean, and free from plastic pollution environment. So that's why. Okay, next slide. Okay, the plastic pollution crisis is depriving Indonesian children of their ecological rights. And I am also the victim of the plastic pollution due to the export of waste, especially plastic waste from developed countries to be recycled by industry in Indonesia, in East Java. So the developed country like Germany, Netherlands, Italy, the UK, Australia, and Japan export their plastic waste to my country to be recycled. They should recycle their own waste since they have more technology, they have more money than us. They have better regulation to control and monitor industrial waste pollution problems. And yes, so we have a domestic waste problem in Indonesia, and we also have another plastic problem that exported from the developed country to our country. So yeah. Okay, next slide. Oh, that's this is me when I'm 12 years old. I went to the one of a dump site near my house in my village. So this is in a riverbank, right? So the riverbank is already full with plastic waste from the developed countries, and I I pick up some plastic waste and I found this packaging, recycle me. It's it being recycled in developing countries and polluting our country, right? Next slide, please. I made a community with my sister called River Warrior. So we want our river, Brantas River, to be clean from plastic pollution because Brantas River is the drinking water source for people in Surabaya. So we do education. We educate a lot of people in our community. We also did demonstration in front of like government's office. So we do like we also wrote letter to the polluter, to the producers. So we boating down to the river, and then we count how many waste piles in the river bank, in the river, and then we also do river cleanup and then beach cleanup, and then we brand audit the waste. We count who are the top polluters that polluting our river with the waste packaging, with the plastic packaging. And then we wrote a letter, and then we send it to the polluter the polluter in our country, Indonesia, Wings Group. And then we also write letter. I write letter to the um to the government Indonesia to ask him to make a strong regulation to stop people throwing their waste to the river, and then also to make good waste management, so we don't have a nice, we call it TPST here, like a place to collect our waste. So we don't have that in villages. It's only available in big cities. So that's why we a lot of people throwing their waste to the river, to the beach, to the ocean, to the river banks, to the roadside. So yeah, next slide please. Actualizing Brantas River that is free from plastic waste through observation, education, and advocacy. It's River Warrior, my team, my community, and this is how I inspire my peers to share this passion. So we go to a lot of schools like middle school, elementary school, and even high school or even university. We educate them to stop using single-use plastic. We tell them the danger of microplastic, how important our river is. Because young generation is really important. We are the heirs of this environment. We will feel the impact later if we still destroying or if we still keep silent of this environmental issue, especially plastic pollution. And then also another demonstration, and then important plastic waste exhibition, and also beach cleanup, and then we do brand audit. Next slide please. This is the answer from the I wrote letter to the President of America in 2019, Donald Trump, and then I got the answer. And yes, actually in 2021, American waste is decreased to 50% to Indonesia. Okay, next slide, please. Last April, I went to INC4 to join the negotiation about plastic treaty. I met a lot of delegation from all around the world. I wrote letter to the European Commission, to the European delegate, and I got the answer from email, and they said furthermore from 21 November 2021, the new EU rules will ban the exports of plastic waste from the EU to non-OECD countries. But it's in 2026. Yeah, it's a long time, yeah. Okay, maybe, next slide, please. But I'm really happy that as youth, we have a really big impact. We are a change maker to our voice. We can speak up and people will listen to us, even the government. And this is my how to convince people that the myth of plastic are false. Plastic is infinite resource that we can use excessively. A lot of people still think that way. And it's really hard to educate people like them, because plastic already help us a lot. A lot of people already comfortable with single-use plastic, using plastic, just use it 5 minutes and then throw it away, just like that. And then plastic is cheap, safe, hygiene, and then keeps us clean and healthy. Yeah, it's still a really bad myth. And the fact is plastic contain a lot of chemical that can harm our health and our environment. And then number three, we can use a lot of plastic because plastic can be recycled. Burning plastic will make the waste disappear. And then plastic pollution is a human behavior and waste problem issue, not because of the excessive production and toxic issue. It's yeah. Next slide. Because it's really complex. But it's true that plastic recycling faces significant challenge that limits, its effectiveness in addressing the plastic pollution crisis. So maybe, yeah, because recycling plastic is really hard, it's really complex, and it will cause environmental pollution. So yeah, and it's really expensive. So we have to follow the 3 Rs: reduce, reuse, recycle. Recycle is the last one. So maybe the first one, the prioritized thing we must do is to reduce, reuse, and then recycle. So we must reduce, we must minimize, we must stop to use single-use plastic in our daily life. And this is River Warrior approach in climate justice advocacy. So we push the youth to do this for steps: literacy, initiation, participation, and collaboration. So we have to literacy, we have to read a lot of news about the dangers of microplastic, about the environmental issue these days. And then initiation, after they understand, after they know about the problem, they will do some action from their own initiation. And then participate or contribute themselves to save the environment, maybe joining some community, or maybe make their own community. And then collaboration is really important. We need a lot of people to collaborate to solve this plastic pollution. Next slide, please. Same with this also, what youth can do, because still a lot of youth that they are not really brave enough, not really confident to speak up, to to educate people, to talk with people. It's really hard, but yeah, I keep push them, because our voice as youth is really important, and they really listen us. Next slide, please. So every single action to reduce plastic waste matters. When we do it consistently, massively, and continuously, we need you all to reduce single-use plastic. We have to change our lifestyle. We have to change our plastic bottle to tumbler, our plastic bag to tote bags, and then we have to educate a lot of people that plastic is really dangerous and it could release microplastic. So it's really important for us, because we will feel the impact later in the future. And as children, we have the rights to live in a clean and plastic-free environment, plastic-free future. So thank you so much for your work. And yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nina. It's so inspiring to hear from a very young, for a very young woman, saying that while she understood the difficulty, the environmental issues, she also believes that the voice, the youth has, I mean, if collectively, the youth will also help, no, raise their voices, then all these issues, environmental issues, can also be solved. So thank you so much again, Nina. Thank you
Thank you.
for all your work, your excellent work, and thank you so much for the inspiration. So now, so from our keynote speaker, we will now go to we also invited four excellent speakers with excellent and diverse expertise, but also really working on enhancing or promoting children's environmental rights. So first, I'm gonna call on Miss Amihan Abueva. She is the Executive Director of Child Rights Coalition Asia. Amihan is currently the executive director of CRC Asia, a regional network of child rights and human rights focused organizations in Asia since January 2015. Amihan Abueva has been a child rights advocate for more than 35 years. She has contributed to strengthening the position of NGOs and child protection efforts by building alliances and coalitions at the national, regional, and international levels. She has extensive experience in promoting and working with children and youth to promote child participation in efforts to protect children from violence, in encouraging active citizenship of children, in promoting the concept of children as human rights defenders and the rights of children to a healthy environment. And as shared earlier, so she received the 2023 Democracy and Human Rights Award from Taiwan President Tsai Ing-wen for an unwavering commitment in fighting child trafficking, sexual exploitation, and all forms of violence against children in Asia. So, Amihan, thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for giving your time and for having, for being with us this afternoon. So, yes.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
First of all, I just want to say I'm very inspired by what Nina has presented to us. And of course, thank you also to Manny for the introductory remarks. So today, I have been asked to present the general comment number 26, which is the children's rights to a healthy environment with a special focus on climate change. So this is the general comment number 26 of the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child. As you know, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child is the most widely ratified convention, human rights convention in the world. So only one country is not party to the UNCRC, and this general comment is a very recent development. So can you go to the next slide? I just want to introduce briefly that the CRC Asia, the organization I'm representing today, is a regional network, and we have 18 member organizations in East Asia, Southeast Asia, and South Asia. So we work together with children for children's rights. So next, we have been working on this topic of children's rights to a healthy environment for several years already. And these are some of the materials that we have published as CRC Asia or in conjunction also with other organizations. So 5,000 and growing is our effort to document the efforts made by children to tackle climate action. So this and environmental rights. And My Planet, My Rights is a guide for children on how they can help to report to the UN Committee on the Rights to Healthy and Safe Environment. The other documents are about the proposals to the ASEAN for the children's rights to healthy environment, as well as the climate cards, which are translated into several Asian languages that can help. It's a very fun way to discuss climate change and environmental rights, as well as how to prepare, how to be more prepared for possible hazards and disasters. So next. Next slide, please. Yes. So the general comment number 26 took two years to develop. It started from 2021 to May 2023, although we have been pushing for this ever since there was a day of general discussion at the UN on children's rights to a healthy environment as early as 2016. So this was very interesting because more than 16,000 children contributed to this general comment, and they were from 121 countries. Aside from the 16,000 plus children, we also had a children's advisory team who were also working directly with the Committee on the Rights of the Child to develop this general comment. So what's very important is that the general comment number 26 acknowledges that children are human rights defenders, and they have been very important agents of change, especially with regards to environmental protection and human rights. So this is why it's very important that we listen to children like Nina, and that we take into account their proposals. So when we discuss the planetary crisis, we talk about three things: no? The climate emergency, the collapse of biodiversity, and the pervasive pollution, of which plastics is a very big part. Next, please. So can we go to the next? Yeah. So the General Comment 26 adopts a rights-based approach to looking at the environment, and it requires the full restoration of children's rights under the UNCRC. So there were three objectives why the General Comment number 26 was developed. First, it emphasizes the need to take urgent action to address the adverse effects of the environmental degradation. Secondly, it promotes a holistic understanding of children's rights as it applies to environmental protection. And the third is to clarify what are the obligations of the states or the governments to the convention, and to provide guidance on what kinds of legislative, administrative, and other appropriate measures are necessary to do this. So in this slide and the next few slides, I will try to look at the specific rights that are directly related to the environment, but also we want to make sure that we understand that the rights are interrelated, they're indivisible, and they have to be seen as a whole. But even if could you go to the previous slide, please? Yeah, so in the previous slide, we also talk about the basic principles, no? The right to non-discrimination, because we know that some children are at bigger threat than others, for example, especially indigenous children, children of minority groups, children with disabilities, and children living in places that are more affected by disasters and climate change. So it's very important that we have information about the inequalities between groups, and that we develop actions that will address this. So we have to make sure that when governments take action on environmental issues, they do not have a negative effect on children. And of course, the best interests of the children are very important. So when the governments make decisions about environment, about developing new industries, they have to take into account first the best interests of the child. And of course, the Article 6, which is the right to life, survival, and development, is very critical, because children's lives are now very much at risk because of the environmental harm like pollution or lead exposure, as well as the effects of climate change. And next, please. Of course, the right to be, these rights here, no, the right to be heard, the right to freedom of expression, association, and peaceful assembly, and access to information are very important. Able to get the right information so that they can develop their views about this, and that they can also cooperate with their peers so that they can express their views, and that they can form the organizations like Nina's group has done, and of course their right to peaceful assembly so that they can get more people to understand the views of children. So another important concept is that this general comment recognizes the principles of intergenerational equity, which means that we should protect the rights of children who are here now, but we also have to take into account the children that are still coming. So we have, when we look at how resources are made, we have to make sure that the resources will still be there for the other children who will continue to come. So next. So of course, very important is the rights of children to protection, and especially the right to all forms of violence, because environmental harm and climate change can lead to unstable situations, conflicts, and inequalities. So that makes more children face the risk of physical and psychological violence. So it's very important that governments set up the services that are for children, and while looking also at trying to solve the root causes of the violence. And of course, when we talk about the right to health, we talk about both physical and mental health. As we know, the planetary crisis has also led to children being exposed to pollutants and lacking the healthy food, and loss of biodiversity also affects our food supply. So it's all very interrelated, no, to the right to health. And of course, we have to talk about mental health too, because one of the problems that we are seeing now is the eco-anxiety. Many children are very worried about the destruction of the environment and their future. Then, of course, children also need to have their rights to social security and a decent standard of living. So I think this is quite clear. Children should be able to access safe food, clean water, decent housing, and they should also make sure, of course, that the facilities that are public facilities are well made so that it doesn't endanger the children. Next, please. And then, of course, the rights to education. This is very important because if for children, as Nina said, it's very important that children have the right to information and to learn about the environment in schools. And at the same time, we need the schools to become effective so that children are also adequately equipped with the skills and the attitudes that will help them to become more resilient and develop creative solutions to the problems. And of course, we also have to take note of the rights of indigenous children and children of minority groups, because the indigenous children live in places that are very dependent on the natural environment, and at the same time, they have indigenous knowledge would be very important for us to be able to learn how to take better care of our biodiversity and general and other aspects of the environment. And of course, as children, we need to make sure that children have the right to rest and play, to have access to the natural environment, and to be able to enjoy time with their friends, and of course enjoy the space, to have safe spaces for them to play. So these are just some of the rights of the child. Next, please. So the next important part of this general comment is, what do governments need to do to protect children's rights? So in this part, the general comment makes it clear about what governments have to do as soon as possible to be able to do their responsibilities to children. So first of all, they have to respect, protect, and fulfill children's rights by making the steps that will help keep their promise to make sure that children grow up in a clean and healthy and sustainable environment. They should also be taking or doing child rights impact assessments, to understand how their decisions about the environment will impact on children. And we have to make sure that they take into account how children of different ages are affected. And this is why children also should also be part of these discussions. Then we have to make sure that the businesses, last mentioned by Nina's talk, the businesses that produce plastic, for example, should also be regulated. No? There should be policies and regulations that will prevent companies from polluting the environment and harming children. And we have to make sure that the businesses do not hide their environmental impact or create misinformation, such as greenwashing, for example. Then, of course, the other point is that we have to make sure that children are able to access justice, whether at the local, national, or international level, because they have to be supported and they have to get compensation for the harm and consequences that they experience. Then another important point is that international cooperation is very necessary because the environmental problems do not stop at the country's border. For example, when we talk about the haze would that might originate from one or two countries would most likely affect all the other countries around it. So that's why it's very important that countries cooperate and that they also look at how they can assist, because we do know that when we talk about climate justice, that some countries have contributed more greenhouse gases than others, but the ones in the south are the most that are affected. So this is why it's very important to have international cooperation. And next, please. Next slide, yes. So it's also very important, of course, that we mitigate the impact of climate change, that we make sure that children are also included in developing adaptation plans, as well as making sure that children will really benefit when countries that experience loss and damage are able to get the technical and financial assistance. So we have to make sure that climate finance does not support action that might violate children's rights. So this is just a short introduction to show you that child rights-centered governance, including public finance management that takes into the account the rights of children, are very necessary to be able to make sure that children get their right to a safe, healthy, and sustainable environment. Next slide, please. So now in the next slide, I just want to show you that what I presented earlier, this is the child-friendly or friendly to all version, which you can download from the website of Children's Rights Environment. And this has already been translated into our local languages, into Thai, Tagalog, Cebuano, Vietnamese, Bahasa Indonesia, Khmer, Burmese, and Lao. So this is already available. The original document is 20 pages. And I would encourage everyone to not just to read, of course, the child-friendly version as an introduction, but also look at the text of the general comment, because it is so rich. It's a very rich document. And for civil society organizations, I think it's a very good guide about the work that we have to do. Next, please. Next slide. Yeah, so what I'm just showing here are some of the recommendations that children and the members of their support system have already told us about what they want to see happen. To prioritize people over profit, to make sure that the information is appropriate in terms of the age group, the cultural and development appropriate formats. And that we have to make sure that we adults provide child-friendly spaces for children to talk about the issues of environment with their peers, with government official, experts, and other members of the support system. And for governments and their partners to institutionalize inclusive spaces. And for those working with children and environmental rights is to make sure that we also help adults understand how to provide the right support for children's participation. So in conclusion, I just want to say that this climate crisis is a child rights crisis, and we look forward to working more effectively with the environmental rights groups, because we need your expertise to help us understand these issues better as we look for scientific and popular solutions to the climate crisis. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amihan. This is a very good, very informative, and comprehensive information that you shared with us. The general comment 26 providing us all the rights of the children that we should protect. And thank you also for emphasizing that the government really have to consider in all its decisions, in all its actions, programs, all the rights of the children, and also our role as civil society in also promoting the children's rights. So thank you again, Amihan, for your inputs. So we will now proceed to our next speaker. I'm so happy that we have our next speaker with us. Um, she's not from Asia, but she's very kind enough to really to confirm and to be with us this afternoon. She confirmed and very willing to share with us their work and her work, their organization's work on promoting environmental children's environmental rights. So our next speaker is Suzanne Astik. She is the Policy and Advocacy Advisor on Children's Rights and Chemicals. She's working with the Child Rights International Network, or CRIN, or CRIN. Suzanne specializes in EU public affairs and chemicals legislation, and as a policy and advocacy advisor of the Child Rights International Network, she supports CRIN's campaigns on better upholding children's rights against exposure to hazardous chemicals. Prior to joining CRIN, she's been working with NGOs at the United Nations level, as well as for the private sector in an EU public affairs consultancy in Brussels. She holds a master's degree in European and international environmental law. So she will be sharing with us on an important topic on children's rights violations linked to the exposure to hazardous chemicals. Suzanne, thank you so much for joining us. Please, the floor is yours now.
Thank you so much, Inky, and hi everyone. I'm really glad to be here. So let me just share my screen for the presentation. I hope you can see it. Just going on the slideshow. I think it's loading. It's a bit slow. Can you see it?
Yes, yes.
Perfect. Amazing. Thank you. So yeah, thanks so much for the invitation, and it's so interesting also to learn from the other panelists. It's very inspiring. So I'm really grateful to be here with you today, and also to present CRIN's work on children rights violation linked to the exposure to hazardous chemicals. Maybe just before delving into the topic, just to explain a bit what we are doing at CRIN and what is, our main areas of work. So we are a children rights organization. We are using art, the advocacy and awareness raising to bring a children rights perspective in the public debate and among decision makers on several environmental health issues. So that includes children rights violation linked to the exposure to harmful substances and especially toxic chemicals. So I'm currently working at the EU level. So the chemicals project focuses on the EU level, but it's relevant worldwide. And our goal is really to uncover the links between hazardous chemicals and children rights violation in the EU, but also beyond. Because what we found out is that this issue is very neglected. For instance, when you look at European legislation, there is very little to almost nothing actually about children's rights that are being impacted by the exposure to hazardous chemicals. So, for instance, the main EU chemicals legislation don't even mention children's rights. That's why for us it was very important to outline which legally binding texts the institutions and the countries are required to uphold. So that includes international and regional frameworks, and also to explain how those frameworks are being violated by the exposure to harmful chemicals, because the chemicals legislation is failing to uphold children's rights. We know that there is a continuous contamination of children on a daily basis through very hazardous substances, even in consumers' products. So the goal is really to invite decision makers, but also the public, to rethink how to better assess, regulate, but also restrict hazardous chemicals. And to do so, we propose several tools and materials for stakeholders, such as NGOs, but also for decision makers, because we're all shaping the chemicals legislation. And the goal is really to help them to better comprehend and uphold children's rights against the exposure to harmful chemicals. To do so, earlier this year, we published a broad report which uncovered the intersectionalities and interlinkages between harmful substances and children's rights infringements. And it comes together with a political manifesto, which invites decision makers to put the reform of the chemical legislation very high on the European agenda. Because you might know, but there's been big elections in the EU level. So we had elections of the European Parliament, and we have new nomination for the European Commission. So that means that there will be a new mandate starting. And the goal is really to have MEPs, so member of European Parliament, but also other EU institutional representatives that are on board and are keen and committed to uphold children's rights and to revise the chemical legislation so it's improved. So I think the important point also to remind, and that's also what we are trying to do at the EU level when, for instance, we're meeting with decision makers, is to recall what and why it's important to protect children. Because of course everyone is exposed to hazardous chemicals, unfortunately, including adults, but children have physical and biological specificity which increase their vulnerability and the impacts of hazardous chemicals on their health and their enjoyment of their rights. And just to mention a few factors that are very important to take into account. There is the developmental vulnerability, because we know that children's organs and the nervous systems are still in development, bordering the prenatal and afterbirth stages, and that means they are way more vulnerable to the exposure of hazardous chemicals. They can also suffer from an exceeding intake of hazardous substances, because they can be exposed to more chemicals with higher intake than adults. For instance, they breathe more often per minute, and they also consume more food and water relative to their body weight. So for instance, when this food or water is contaminated with pesticides and endocrine disruptors and other chemicals, that can have a direct impact on their health. Children also have specific behavioral habits. As we know, they like to play on the ground, in water courses, they're exploring the world through touch and taste. And on account of their age, they can also be less able to evaluate the risks. So for instance, to read the labels, understanding the warnings, or use protective equipment and adopt protective behaviors. Another aspect that is very crucial and quite often forgotten by decision makers, unfortunately, is the very important aspect of marginalization, because the marginalization of some groups of children are actually amplifying their vulnerability to hazardous substances. We have an exacerbating presence of hazardous chemicals in areas that are called sacrifice zones. So for instance, for people living around chemicals plants or dump sites. And in these areas, children that are in marginalized demographics, that are suffering the greatest harms of all, because they have a reduced resilience to diseases, which can be also associated with economic deprivation, discrimination, and sometimes also malnourishment. So because of all these factors and this specific children's vulnerability, there is also a huge responsibility for member states, countries, and also the institutions, both international and regional institutions, to guarantee and to protect children's rights. And that includes by revising and adopting very ambitious chemicals legislation. And unfortunately, we know that worldwide, we are still exposed, and children are still exposed to a wide range of hazardous chemicals. So there's still a lot of work to do on that side. And that's why it's very important to remind the decision makers that we have legally binding texts. The main one was very thoroughly and very well presented by the previous speaker. So it's the UN Convention on the Right of the Child, which is really the cornerstone agreement and documents for us when we're working on chemicals, because unfortunately a lot of children's rights that are enshrined in the UNCRC are being impacted and violated by the exposure to hazardous chemicals. But there are also regional conventions that can be also legally binding. So taking the example again of the Europe, you have the Aarhus Convention, which guarantees the public participation, access to information, and access to justice. There is an equivalent, for instance, in Latin America with the Escazú Agreement. And you have also other human rights frameworks. So you have the European Convention on Human Rights, for instance, and the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the EU. So again, institutions and the member states are legally bound by these texts, and they should always do their best to uphold children's rights. There are also non-legally binding strategies that are very interesting. For instance, the EU Strategy on the Rights of a Child, which should be a key compass for the EU institutions when taking decisions that could have an impact on children. And there is also the EU Chemical Strategy for Sustainability, which was supposed to be a plan at least for the last mandate and hopefully for the new mandate of the EU to improve several texts on chemicals regulation. Maybe you are very familiar already with that. The non-legally binding sustainable development goals are also very relevant when we're talking about exposure to hazardous chemicals. And finally, another body of text that is very crucial to look at for all of us as civil society is the UN, so the United Nations experts reports and recommendation and resolution. So as it was mentioned, the general comments from the Committee on the Right of a Child are very important and very relevant when we're looking at the impacts of environmental health threats on children's rights. And there are a lot of reports also issued by the special rapporteurs, so at the United Nations, for instance, the special rapporteurs on toxics and human rights, and the special rapporteurs on the environment and human rights. They are quite often looking at the impacts of pollution and toxics on children's rights. There are also Human Rights Council's resolutions that are really interesting to look at, and the UN General Assembly resolutions that can be very groundbreaking and helping us to move forward and to pressure the governments to do better in terms of children's rights protection. Just to briefly mention, because I think it was very well presented before already, but maybe to make the connections with hazardous chemicals. So regarding to the UN CRC, so the Convention on the Rights of a Child, as it was mentioned, is a very important text because it's been signed by so many countries, and it enshrines a wide range of children's rights that are actually, unfortunately, still being violated by the exposure to hazardous chemicals. So, of course, you have the rights to life, to the highest attainable standards of health, and to develop as persons to the maximum extent possible, but unfortunately is being infringed by the exposure to, for instance, endocrine disruptors, substances that can impair the neurological development, neurotoxic substances, or, for instance, substances that are dangerous for the respiratory system. There are also the rights to gender equality and non-discrimination that are very important. As I mentioned, there is a huge connection with marginalization. And also the right to education is coming into play when we're looking at exposure to hazardous substances, because, for instance, this exposure can be linked to impact on the IQ and impacts on the IQ loss. Another right that is unfortunately impacted is the right to play, because that should mean the right to play safely. But sadly, a lot of toys, for instance, are contaminated and contain a wide range of hazardous substances, including bisphenols, PFAS, sulfur pollutants, and other carcinogenic substances. There is also very relevantly the right to physical integrity. This right is quite often neglected, especially when we're talking about hazardous chemicals, because it's a bit of a niche topic, but it's still highly relevant here. Because the right to physical integrity means that non-consensual physical or mental intrusion against the body constitutes a human right violation. And the Special Rapporteur on Toxics at the time acknowledged that exposure to hazardous chemicals actually constitutes such a violation. So the exposure to harmful chemicals also ask a very important question of consent. And actually, we can see that especially for children, the consent is often or even always violated by the exposure to harmful chemicals. And finally, the overarching principle of the convention is for the states to prioritize the best interest of a child. That should be the guiding principle when taking decision and when designing environmental and public health norms, and also to ensure that there is an access to information and effective remedies for children and their parents. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, there is still an ongoing contamination of children with chemicals, with a wide exposure worldwide. And so we see that actually states fail to really apply and comply with the UNCRC. Just to mention very briefly some reports that are very relevant and that looked at in detail at the connections between toxics and human rights, and especially children's rights. In 2016, we had a groundbreaking report from the Special Rapporteur on Toxics. And in this report, it acknowledged that the exposure starts before birth via the mother's own exposure. And we had the case of pre-polluted children. He also flagged the fact that there is a silent pandemic ongoing. So it's a silent pandemic of diseases that it's partially linked with the exposure to hazardous chemicals. And finally, he flagged and warned that the impacts can be irreversible and can be even passed down from one generation to the next, with long-term impacts for children. In 2017, we had a joint report on pesticides, so from the Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food and the Special Rapporteur on the Right to Toxics and Human Rights. And it mentioned that children are most vulnerable to pesticide contamination, also because they have a higher dose per unit of body weight. And very interestingly, it also mentioned that the exposure to even low levels of pesticides can be very damaging to children's health. And that's a very crucial point, because very often in chemical safety regulations, there is this paradigm and this core concept that the dose makes the poison. But actually, with the latest state of science and the latest studies, we have a demonstration that even at very low doses, like for instance for endocrine disruptors, very low doses of chemicals can cause very long damage to children's health. So the dose doesn't make the poison, actually. And finally, very importantly, pregnant women who are exposed to pesticides are also at higher risk of miscarriage, preterm delivery, and birth defects, which can also have impacts on the long term throughout the life of a child. To mention very briefly, more recently, there's been a lot of reports and resolution also flagging the links between hazardous chemicals and children's rights violation. In 2020, the report of the United Nations High Commissioner for Human Rights warned that states must prevent childhood toxic exposure to protect children's rights to life, survival, development, health, and bodily integrity. The same year, we had the resolution from the Human Rights Council on the rights of a child through a healthy environment, and it urged the states to ensure the right of a child to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standards of physical and mental health, and that included by identifying and eliminating source of exposure of children to substances of high concern, including endocrine disrupting chemicals. Sadly, we can still see that the states didn't act on it enough, and we are still exposed, and children are still exposed to hazardous chemicals, including EDCs. In 2022, we had the UN General Assembly resolution on the right to a healthy, clean, and sustainable environment, and it explicitly mentioned chemicals. So it explained that unsound management of chemicals actually interferes with the enjoyment of this right to clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. And more recently, as it was mentioned, so we had this general comment from the Committee on the Right of a Child, General Comment 26, and it urged the states to address the adverse effects of environmental degradation on the enjoyment of children's rights, and that can also apply to chemicals. Here are just a few examples, which those are further detailed in our report. But just I think those are a very good example to better understand the connections between hazardous chemicals and children's rights violations. So as I mentioned, for instance, the right to play is being infringed by the exposure to hazardous chemicals found in toys, both in Europe, but also worldwide. And we also have the right to have that is being violated, for instance, by the exposure to very hazardous pesticides, and including in sensitive areas, which means states and authorities are still allowed to spray pesticides, for instance, at school, on playgrounds, and kindergartens. So there is a very important issue here, because even in what we call sensitive areas, children are still exposed to pesticides. There is a right to physical integrity, as I mentioned, and we know that, for instance, very early exposure to glyphosate, which is an herbicide and pesticides, has been linked to prenatal exposure with damages on the fetus, and that can have impacts throughout the life of a child. And another right that is very crucial is the right to non-discrimination. As I mentioned, there are sacrifice zones worldwide, and there is also the very big issue, as it was mentioned by Nina, of the authorization for export. So that includes also authorization for exporting plastics, but also exporting very hazardous chemicals to non-EU countries. So basically, the EU has been prohibiting very hazardous substances for European countries, but actually it's still authorized for companies to export these prohibited substances outside of the EU. So there is unacceptable, this is completely unacceptable double standards, and we are trying to work and to advocate to put an end and ban this export of hazardous chemicals. And finally, there is also very important rights to access justice and remedies. And sadly, for instance, in the EU, the legislation is lagging behind because there are civil loopholes under chemicals legislation. Basically, under the two main chemicals legislations in the EU, which are REACH and CLP, there is absolutely no access to justice for the victims, and in case of non-compliance, for instance, from the companies or even from the member states. So those are just a few examples. If you want more detail, there is everything in the report. Hopefully it can be useful. It can be a tool, again, to also explain to the public and the decision makers what are the connections between children's rights and hazardous chemicals. So this is just an example of the report with the overview of infringements. And that is it for me. My key messages overall would be that children's rights should be the key compass for decision-making worldwide, also because there are vulnerable groups, there are the future generation, but there are also right holders now and entitled to this human rights I mentioned via the UN and EU framework. So it's the responsibility for decision makers to uphold these rights and to also do better when legislating on chemicals. There are more resources available on our website, and also don't hesitate to contact me. You have my contact details on this slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Suzanne. All the things that you've shared, they're quite frightening that our children are continuously their rights are being violated by being affected by all the toxic chemicals pollution. So if we have like triple planetary crisis, the climate crisis, so Amihan shared about how children are also affected by climate crisis. And you, Suzanne, you shared about how the other crisis, pollution, the pollution is also affecting the and violating the rights of the children. And also the other one is, of course, the biodiversity loss. Sorry. So all this happening, the crisis that we are experiencing are really affecting our children and the rights of our children. So thank you so much. I will also have to briefly mention that I had a brief talk with SR, Special Rapporteur Marcos Aureliana, in Geneva last week, and he is also working on more reports. And I also shared about this ongoing efforts on protecting children's environmental rights, and we hope that we can also have, like, there will be, if there will be future reports, we can again contribute in the report of the Special Rapporteur. So thank you again, Suzanne, and all the work of of CREAN. Thank you so much for sharing all your great work. And IPEN is also really working on toxic chemicals, and maybe, yeah, we can also have more future collaborations on this related topic. So thank you so much again. Um, so we had three speakers earlier, like Nina, Amihan, and Suzanne. So I think we can have like 2 to 3 questions now before we proceed to our 2 other speakers. So if you have questions, urgent questions to our speakers, feel free to type it on the Q&A chat box. And you can also, if you want, you can also raise your hand so we can acknowledge you. Earlier, I saw the hand of Daro. Daro, would you like to ask the first question?
Oh, sorry, I didn't raise hand. Maybe due to other.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So, okay. So yeah, we also have messages to our speakers. So first to Nina, so Monica Alonso from Eco Waste Coalition expresses her in gratefulness to you, Nina. He said that he is inspired by how you
It's Ram who used my name. Why Ram is using my name?
Is it yours name? I don't know. I connected with my mobile, but I don't know how it is.
sorry. Would you like to ask question?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh,
Okay.
thank you all the good, very exciting presentation, insightful. My question is, despite of doing all these years of long research-based campaign, in terms of chemical safety related issue associated with children, but the thing is not improving as we expected. And that is because of many reasons, like external pressure, internal lack of capacity at the government end. So these are the things we have experienced. So my question is general, but maybe specifically to the second speakers. Uh, how many countries have the mandatory children toy standards? Because I see in case of Nepal, once we had the mandatory children toy standard that was killed by the corporate society by pressurizing our government to revoke that mandatory standard, which took 4 years for us to be enacted, but it took just 3 months corporate society to sabotage it. And I think similar situation, or maybe very few countries have the mandatory 2 age standards. And as the speaker was saying that CRC is especially for the children right. Nepal is also the party to CRC, even I think 33 years, since 33 years. But Nepali children are not able to play with the safe toy, which is basic things. Well, even sometimes we found that the baby foods, baby bottles are counterfeit or laden with multiple chemicals. So having said that, my question is, despite of country being party to CRC, despite of there are number of initiative at the local levels, the situation of the children right is not very encouraging. So how we can work together to enhance the status of child right, or to ensure the child right to be effectively implemented in our respective country and in the region. So that is my question. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Ram. So you're asking the question to Amihan, or would you like Amihan and Suzanne to also answer?
I think anyone can answer, but mostly the CRC presentation related
Okay.
with it.
Okay. Thank you, Ram.
Thank you.
Suzanne, would you like to answer first? I think Amihan also wants.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes, so
Suzanne.
thank you for the question. This is actually a very important point because the general comment is a soft law. No? So it is providing guidance, but it is not a hard international law. So it means that what would still be important would be the local legislation and the implementation of the local legislation. And to put this into effect, this is why it's very important that the children themselves and the adults who support the children work directly with their governments to propose what kind of legislation should be put in place. So in this case where you mentioned that the government repealed the legislation in favor of business interests. This is, of course, very detrimental for the children. And there is still I think it's still important to continue to protest this. And then the next other means to complain or is through the reports. No, every 5 years the governments are supposed to make reports to the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child. So when these reports are made by the state, the UN committee has already declared that there will be one set of rights or one cluster of rights looking at environmental rights. So this is where the children and the civil society groups and NHRIs, independent NHRIs and other competent bodies can then come together and develop an alternative report so that this question is asked directly to the government. And most likely the Committee on the Rights of the Child will listen to the alternative reports and ask the governments. And therefore, the concluding observations will be made. And this might include the response from the committee on the specific question. So I think the problem is there is no easy answer to how changes will be made. I want to also note the point that Nina has made about how she has been able to write to the other governments, the heads of other governments, to respond to their concerns about the dumping of plastics. So I guess there's no easy way, Ram. You just have to keep on going and hope that
Yes,
we
we are.
develop
Yeah.
and this is why it's so important for us to work together with other groups so that we have a wider support. So for example, if the environmental groups get to work with the child rights groups and other human rights organizations, hopefully we can make a bigger impact on changing the laws and of course asking for the implementation. So we are trying to look for different ways to provide more space for the views of children and advocates for the environment to be able to speak. So yeah, there's no easy
Okay.
solution.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Amihan. Suzanne, yes, please. You have
Yeah,
the
no,
floor.
very quickly and fully agree on what was said. I think, you know, like also focusing on legally binding text is very important, and bringing also like the international angle, because for instance, when you take to like an example, for instance, what's happening in the EU, they are neglecting children's rights because they are completely forgetting that there are actually legally binding texts such as the convention. So it's very important that child rights organization, but also children themselves, have a voice to remind the governments their engagement and commitment. Because, for instance, on toys, we have currently a revision process to better, you know, uphold and better protect children's health. But sadly, we're also facing a very important lobbying from the chemical industry. And if we don't have people, you know, meeting with MEPs, including people from child rights organization, environmental health organizations, scientists, and children, meeting with them, then there is a risk that the revision is not satisfying, and there is a risk that the ambitions of the text are not that good. So it's very important also to, and I think that's something the EU is failing for the moment, is really to include civil society and especially children. And also we need to look at how to fight against corporate capture, how to fight against lobbying. So maybe also revising the rules of involving companies in the debate, because for the moment they have a huge role and they have a huge space for them. But it's very strange to think that basically the polluters are able to contribute to decision makings on their pollution. It doesn't make any sense. So I think, you know, it's very important also to reorganize how the discussions and the participations is you know, thought and is conceived. And yeah, and that includes also like international negotiations such as like the Basel, Rotterdam, and Stockholm conventions on chemicals, because we have similar issues at the international level. And in terms of standards, we have standards worldwide, but unfortunately it depends also on the countries. So for instance, on toys you have ISO standards, and in the EU, you have the EU legislation, but sadly, in other countries, we still, you know, like missing chemical safety regarding toys. So that's also a gap that we need to bridge.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Amihan and Suzanne, for answering the questions. Later, I think we will also have question for Nina, but for now, I think we should proceed to the next speakers. But thank you again, Amihan and Suzanne. So let me call on the next speaker. So our next speaker is Uni Eribu. She is the program or Chime program manager um, in Nexus Foundation for Environment, Health, and Development in Indonesia. So Uni has been working as an educator for 15 years and keep learning about how to understand children's world better. Her goal is to improve the quality of Indonesian children through education and healthy environment. She believes that all children have the right to access good quality of education and live in a toxic-free environment to achieve a bright future. And she has extensive training in children's participation, children's human rights, brain gym workshops for children. And she's also a finalist of the Indonesia Accelerator for Grassroots Women Environmental Leaders, organized by Women's Earth Alliance in 2021. So Uni, you have the floor now.
Thank you, Chinky, for the introduction. Yeah, I'm going to share my slides now. Okay.
Yes, we can see it.
Yes,
Thank you.
thank you. Okay, everyone, nice to meet you here, and thank you for IPEN for inviting me as one of the speaker here. Yeah, I think all the information about the children's right or the ecological right is covered by Uzen and Amihan, of course. But by starting this one, I will introduce Nexus 3, because probably not all of you know about Nexus 3 before. Yeah, Nexus 3 is we are starting from 2000s with Bali Focus and rebranding on back in 2019. Rebranding to Nexus for Health, Environment, and Development Foundation. And we're still working with all stakeholders to protect vulnerable groups from the impact of development on the health and the environment towards justice and toxic-free and sustainable future. Also, we also work for the local problems and global challenges. And if you might see here, over here is Nexus Alliances. What was one of the alliances is also with IPEN. That's why we, in our works, also involve or join with the IPEN's project. And this is about CHIME. CHIME is stand for Children's Health Intervention in Most Polluted Environment. Actually, when we are starting this program back in 2018, it was stand for Children's Health Intervention in Mercury Polluted Environment, which is it started in the location of mercury exposure in the ASGM area. We piloting the project in Lombok area, in West Lombok, where the ASGM is very massive in that place since I think back in 2018 to 2008 to 2012 for the peak one. And then if the impact of the mercury emissions or pollution is just shown in the late 2018, where we also did the several activities or projects for the baseline with the children. That's why we have here the CHIME is an initiative to protect and to improve children's health in most polluted environment. Okay. And again, here is about the why we are insisting on focusing on the children's health, because we also registered ourselves, our organization, to the global recognition to the right to a health environment, which is have these substantive elements of the rights to access to clean air, safe climate, healthy and sustainably produce food, access and access to safe water. Yeah, this also about the background why we are need to have more focus on the children's health. And also Nexus also involve or participate in petition about this global coalition as well back in 2023. Because yeah, we also Nexus also work with Marcos Aurelian, and this is why we choose children's ecological rights, because Indonesia stated that in 2045 Indonesia will have a gold generation, which is Indonesia also stated or is collected as the 1/3 of Indonesia's populations are children, which is it's equal to around 80 million, 85 million children, and it's the fourth largest of any country in the world. Yeah, in Indonesia we have very massive, lots of children, but if we if Indonesia aims to have a gold generation in 2045, this is how we worry about, because we know back in the field, it's yeah, like Susan said, it's a lot of hazardous chemicals around that will harmful with harmful children. And as Amihan as well mentioned about GC26, we also Nexus also participate on gathering the petition along with the children about the general comments here. And yeah, this is all about the background why we still doing the promoting for the children's ecological rights. Yeah, in Indonesia, this is the situation now. We cannot hide it from this. The like Nina said, also the plastic papers and from the agrochemicals, the using of pesticides, it's very massive and still uncontrollable, I think, because the pesticide, the fertilizer is also still spread out for the farmers. And mining nowadays is very destructive, of course, and because of the government will say it is development. This is for the industry investment, but they didn't think about the children who lives in the area. It's very sad to have a look children who lives in hazardous or on the polluted area, like Mercury area, which is in the ISDM area. Indonesia has 38 province with based on Nexus data, we have collected that that there are more than 30 province in Indonesia has the ISDM area. This is how we have looked with for the children in this area, and also for the waste disposal is still not well regulated and not well handling for this waste disposal, which is still everywhere without any thought how to save this from the children, because children will play anywhere. Children have no idea the playground they going to play, is it safe or not. They just go to the other place and play around without know the impact if they are play on that area for longer time. And this is we collect from the children from our beneficiaries. We are having the FGDs with them. We are asking them about the environmental problems and what the challenges with them. And some of them saying it's about child labor, it's low educated parents. And bullying is also a main issue for them. But yeah, they also mention about the environmental pollution, because they are some of them living in the different background of environmental pollution. Yeah, we're trying to have a discussion with them, not intentionally to drop them down about this situation, but we would like to encourage them that they have the rights to live in the safe environment and clean, because they have the right. And this is what we do. This is our action. We did the awareness raising campaign. If you might see here, we also have the awareness raising campaign in several areas, because we're starting in 2018. And yeah, we also did the training for teachers, like this in the schools. Our target is schools, okay, and this is our project. In 2018 until 2019, this is our first project that we are doing. We did our baseline about the exposure chemicals in mercury, which is it is in ISGM area. In this at this period of time, we did we call it rapid participatory assessment, where we are rapid participatory assessment is a assessment for children who live in the metro ISDM area. We ask them to play together with the snake and ladder, but with different questions, mostly with the situation where they have in this area. And also we ask about their health. Do they know about their health? If they feel something about if they feel something bad after the burning of the amalgam, because in ISDM miners will burn the amalgamation for getting the gold. Some miners burn it in the kitchen, right besides the rooms of the children, or children will play with in the gold processors, or even they touch the mercury in bare hands, because they have no idea if it's harmful or not for them. And next, for the 2019 until 2021, we still proceed our project at this area, but we also did the body burden for the children who lives in this area, connected with the IQ. I just glad that Suzanne also mentioned that harmful chemicals will impacted with the IQ, because we have it already. We just got the result by a couple of days ago about the new result of the IQs of the children who live in the ISGM area. It's so sad. Yeah, the IQs is low average. Most of them is low average. So yeah, it's so sad to know the result. Yeah, in this period of project, we also did the introduction. How do they save themselves if something happened with the ICM area, meaning like, please do not go to the mining shop, because since miners will use a smaller body, which is sometimes they use the boys, their son, to let them go under the shop to get the ore, because they are very they have a smaller body, easier for them to go inside the shop. It's so dangerous. And we ask the children, we introduce to the children, this is the harmful if you are keep going or helping your father by doing the mining processing. And also, we also it's not the educate, but we call it like raising awareness, because if we educate, we said it, we educate the minors, they will it's a control for them, because they will say this is our needs for the money. This is the easiest income we have uh, to provide our families to provide the needs of our families. They will settle. Then what we done that it's also just raising the awareness for the children. Of course, it's not for the parents, because the adults, sometimes the adults also if they are already they will not receive our insight. And then back in 2021 until 2023, we have the project as well for the advancing of ecological child rights in Indonesia. That's why we rebrand our time fund into most polluted environment, because based on our experience on our last project, it's not only for the children's rights, is not only because of the mercury polluted, but in other city or in other area, there also children who are affected from other harmful chemicals. Like in mentioning in Jakarta, like because I'm in Jakarta, Jakarta is the worst cities for the air pollution. So we also having activities with children in Jakarta. In this period of time, we are running the project within 7 provinces in and 13 schools, if I'm mistaken. It took it's involved 400 something, more than 400 students having these activities with us. We gave them workshop series about the ecological child rights. What is their right? What is the how to measure or how to acknowledge the pollution in easiest way. Because along with IPEN as well, Nexus also involves in citizen science. So we have the simple package for the students to have the same experience like citizen science in the same simple way. And continuously we move forward into this year, starting from last year to the to 2026. It's still about the environmental children's rights, but mostly this project is based on the GC26. And yeah, this is about our last project, ongoing project, which is this is collaboration with Indonesian and Philippines partner. We are promoting children's right to a healthy environment through children and youth from Philippines and Indonesia, and we call it Children and Youth Action and Environmental Children's Right. They are supported by TPH and the Germany Federal Ministry. In Indonesia, we have other partners. It was Yayasan RMI, who also focusing for the youth. In this project, we have the environmental training program, which is we will work with the student unions member at the school, because we thought that the schools has the regulation in the student union member. They are they have the specific terms. Then we hope that by involving with the student union members, they will lately they will have their own program and this student union member for this activity. So we are segmented this project into 3 chapters. Like we in the first chapter we introduced and the orientation about what is the children's right, what is children's right, and then what is environmental issues, and then what is the impact of the children's right. And but we also introduced to them that the source of environmental issues is not only from the waste. We asked them to have a look in under their surrounding, or whether it's about the pollutions of the air pollution or the water polluted by something, by the chemicals or what. That's why we have the activities for the project here, for doing the air quality test by using the air visual. But we also have our own IQ Air portable, and we ask them to trying to access the iqair.com, so they will have a better understanding. This is how to access the platform to get to know the air quality. And for water quality test, we just
Hi, Shee. Sorry,
yeah,
but yeah, can we have? Is it okay if you wrap up now? You
yeah,
can.
it's almost done. Yeah, this
Okay,
is for the yeah, this is for the math substances. And we also send out our children along with CRT Asia as well. We have Ansan as well here. And we held also the webinar with children as speakers. And we have also Nina before. And this is, we also have the video competition. And this is our recommendation because children deserve their better future. So yeah, they are deserve to inform about their rights. They are deserve to be able to express their voices. And the most thing is they are deserve to a better future. I think yeah, that's all from me. Thank you, Chinky. Thank you
Thank you
all.
so much, Uni. Thank you. I totally agree that the children deserves better future. And thank you so much for sharing all your great initiatives, not only in Indonesia, because you're also partnering organizations in the Philippines and also participating in ASEAN initiatives. So thank you. Thank you so much. Um, so now we will have one more speaker. May I call on Prilia Kartika Apsari from the Indonesian Center for Environmental Law. So Prilia or Prili obtained her bachelor's degree from the Faculty of Law, University of Indonesia, with a specialization in state administrative law, specializing in environmental law. Prilly was once an awardee of the Kennedy Lugar Youth Exchange and Studies Student Exchange Scholarship Program and is still active in volunteering at the Intercultural Development Foundation. With ICEL, Prilly is responsible for advocating for strengthening the capacity of institutions and law enforcement systems, as well as strengthening laws related to biodiversity and environmental management and natural resources. And Prilly became a pioneer in building enabling instruments to fulfill women's rights in sustainable development. And she's involved in strengthening organizational governance, especially preparing for organizational independence. So Prilly, please take the floor. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Chinky, for the introductory remarks, and thank you everyone for having me as a representative for Indonesian Center for Environmental Law. I think I'm going to share my screen now. Okay, so I think I'm going to make it short so I don't take too much of your time. Okay, so everyone see my screen? Okay, I hope everyone can see my screen. Is it visible?
In my screen, not yet. It says it started screen sharing, but I cannot see it yet.
I'm sorry.
Can you try it
There-
again?
Sorry,
Okay.
I was disconnected.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Okay. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, yes. Now, yes, I can see it. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so I would also like to appreciate all of the other speakers for giving presentations that are very comprehensive, and I personally have received like lots of knowledge as well from your presentations. And I think in my presentation, I'm just gonna cover more on and also update on the development of Asian Declaration on Environmental Rights. So as a context, since 2022, Indonesian Center for Environmental Law has been one of the member of Asian Environmental Rights Working Group. And also actually Amihan from CRC, also part of the Asian environmental working groups. And we've been trying to develop the Asian Declaration on Environmental Rights. As we all know that we haven't had it. So yeah, I'm gonna describe it more later in my presentation. So I think what I'm going to be talking about are these four things. The first one is just kind of like reviewing all the existing Asian frameworks that are relating to children's rights, not necessarily on environmental rights, but I just want to go through quickly about which documents have relevance toward children's environmental rights, and then also talking about the importance of incorporating children's rights in Asian scope, and then the current development of Asian Declaration on Environmental Rights and the incorporation of children's rights within the draft, and last, the reflection also and also ways forward. So as for the existing Asian framework on children's rights, and later on the direct relevance on children's environmental rights, I think I tried to gather some of the Asian documents that might be relevant or might be covering the issue on children's rights. And I tried to look for direct relevance toward children's environmental rights. Of course, these are some of the documents that I found, but I'm pretty sure there are other more. But yeah, these are some of the examples. I did 2 points in all of these Asian documents. Most of them saw children as one of the categories within the vulnerable groups. And then they also put the narratives that sound like ensuring equity for current and also future generations. So there's a lot of interlinkage with one of the environmental principles, which is the intergenerational equity. So that's one of the good things also that Asian documents has. Of course, there still needs a lot of improvement and development, but we're going to talk about it later. So these are some of the documents, and of course, it is beyond Asian scope. But I want to also note that in the Paris Agreement in 2015, in its preamble, it also acknowledges the rights to vulnerable groups in the midst of environmental crisis and also climate crisis. So yeah, it mentioned children being one of the vulnerable groups that needs to be addressed especially. Next, I'm going to be talking about the importance of incorporating children's rights in Asian scope. So I think previous speakers have talked about it very comprehensively. So I'm just gonna emphasize and recall some of the things. So what is happening actually right now? We know that we've been faced by the issue on triple planetary crisis, which includes the issue on climate change, or now the narrative has shifted into climate crisis. And then we also suffered from biodiversity loss and pollution and waste. And we can also see it in the IPCC reports that has confirmed that there has been an increase in Earth temperature, and therefore there is a need to reduce emissions in a global level to achieve net zero emissions by 2050. And for the Indonesian context itself, because I'm from Indonesia, there has been reports that said there has been a rise in frequency of natural disasters due to climate crisis. And what is happening, what is affecting, what are the effects of these planetary crisis that has been happening. So we know that general society is of course suffering from the occurrence of environmental crisis, but we also have to emphasize that vulnerable and also marginalized groups are the worst ones who are actually affected by this phenomenon. And by that we also meaning that we mention about children, women, elderly, people with disabilities, indigenous communities, and so on and so forth. So children is indeed one of the vulnerable groups that needs to be specifically addressed in order for us to, when it comes to like creating environmental policies and also regulations. And as we all know, and as it also has been previously mentioned, children are more prone to environmental risks due to their vulnerabilities. We can see that, they are exposed to higher doses of pollutants in any given environment, and also it can be happening during the fetal development up to early postnatal life, that increases the lifelong risk of chronic disease. I think it was already mentioned before too that the climate crisis has affected pregnant mothers, very severely, so that also will impact children when they're born. And in many circumstances, children also do not have equitable access to healthcare services and social protection mechanisms. Therefore, they are prone to being exposed to greater risks and vulnerabilities, especially in developing countries. I think I want to also refer it to what Nina has said in her speech before, that people in developing countries are even more prone to risks that are happening because of climate crisis. Well, not only climate crisis, but environmental crisis in general. And these are some of the systemic violence and injustice that happen toward vulnerable groups, which includes children. There are barriers referring to negative attitudes that can be in form of the stigma toward vulnerable groups. And then there are environmental barriers in the form of restrictions of access and information, and also not accommodating the needs of vulnerable groups. And there are also institutional barriers, such as limited provisions that protect children in laws, policies, strategies, and other practices. And as we all know, there are many forms of violence against children, such as physical violence, sexual violence, mental violence, that derived from the occurrence of climate crisis and also environmental crisis. So it is really a form of systemic violence, because state and governments are in a failure in mitigating and also adapting and also responding to the environmental crises that are happening around us. And then as for the categorization of vulnerable groups in Asian, there are some documents that already acknowledge that children is one of the category within the vulnerable groups. These are some of the examples, but again, there are also other documents that mention children as one of the vulnerable group that needs to be addressed. And then I think the importance of incorporating children's rights in the environmental discourse in Asian, aside from their vulnerability, we have to also highlight the exercise of one of environmental principle, which is intergenerational equity. So basically, what we need to do when creating any policies or regulations that address environmental issues, we have to ensure that the development is meeting the needs for present and future generations. And when we're talking about future generations, of course, the discourse will heavily involve children and also youth, as they are going to be the ones who are going to live here hopefully much longer. And also they're going to be the ones who are more exposed to the environmental crisis that's been happening now, and also because the cause of the environmental crisis right now is because human intervention in the current generation. So yeah, those are the two main reasons why it is important for us to then incorporate environmental children's rights in environmental discourse in Asian. And I think we have to highlight the intersectionality approach when we talk about childhood or children, because we know that even in the children community itself, there are many classes, social classes, and also other difficulties that the children community itself is facing. For example, we can say that there are children who are also part of the disability community, and also there are children who are part of the indigenous community, and of course those people who experience quote unquote double injustice or triple injustice needs to be addressed differently and more specifically. So yeah, I think intersectionality under JEDC perspective, or gender equity, disability, and social inclusion, needs to be also emphasized when we're talking about the creation of any environmental documents. And some of the stages that need to be addressed when we're trying to do JEDC responsive approach is, first, we have to be able to identify the fundamental problems of the community that we are targeting for. For example, if we want to talk about children, then we have to have segregated data that consists of data that are segregated on different issues that's happening to children, so we can know what are the true problems about it, what are the true root causes of it. Therefore, we can find the right and suitable solutions for it, not to make it in a general helicopter view. And then after that, we also have to ensure the accessibility to for children when we're talking about environmental policies and regulations. And last, we also have to make sure the meaningful participation is guaranteed for children and youth as a part of the community and vulnerable group in the environmental matters. And last, when we are trying to fulfill children's environmental rights, we have to talk about at least three matters. First one is procedural rights. So when exercising environmental rights, there are two types of rights, which is procedural rights. It is mostly relating to access of information, access to public participation, and so on and so forth. And then for substantive rights are more thematic and also more specific in different sectors. For example, when we're talking about adaptation and mitigation in climate crisis, or regarding hazardous materials, or regarding the issue on forestry, and in the issue on marine, the issue on other things as well. So that's regarding the substantive rights. And last but not least, if those two things can be fulfilled for children, then therefore we can gain a complete fulfillment of environmental rights. I think I want to refer to also what Amihan said before. These rights need to be seen as a whole, so we can't see it only partially, but we have to see it in order for environmental rights exercised fully. Therefore, all of the other elements need to be exercised as well, including the rights of children in this matter. And I want to talk about the current development of Asian Declaration on Environmental Rights and the incorporation of children's environmental rights within the draft. So the Asian Environmental Rights Working Group has been developed starting in 2023. In 2022, we had an ad hoc preparatory session of an Asian Environmental Rights Framework, where they produced the terms of reference of Asian Environmental Rights Working Group. But then in 2023, the Asian Environmental Rights Working Group was established. And now from 2023 until 2024, we had several meetings, and the last meeting we had was the fourth meeting in Jakarta, and the upcoming meeting, we're gonna have the fifth Asian Environmental Rights Working Group meeting in Kuala Lumpur from July 1st to 3rd. And before the fourth meeting, some of us actually conducted a stakeholder consultation where we tried to distribute all the draft to be seen by public, and then we are open for inputs for then by us later on. We are going to present. We are going to try to deliver it during the forum. yeah, and then we're gonna have the fifth meeting. I think in this meeting we're gonna have it finalized, the document. But sadly, in this document, the issue on youth and children was only mentioned twice, and one of the clause was actually put into bracket. So putting it into bracket means that it has a possibility of being removed later in the future. And as we all know, after the draft is finalized in the fifth meeting, it is going to be discussed by the HR without the other working members, and we are not going to know what's going to happen there in the HR forum because it's an internal meeting, so we don't have any intervention anymore. So yeah, there are actually a lot of regression on the discourse or on the discussion regarding in the Asian Environmental Working Group itself. So there are some issues on the general matter. So aside from the I believe that children environmental rights is an enabling condition, or in order for environmental rights need to be fully exercised completely. But the general environmental matters themselves are still facing a lot of problems in the discussion within the working group. For example, the identification of which community is a part of vulnerable groups itself was still heavily debated on, especially in the issue on indigenous communities. So UNDREP was removed from sorry, not removed, but put in the bracket, and also was striked through, meaning there is a lot of ambiguity and there's a lot of possibility of it being removed. And then yeah, so UNDRIP was removed from the preamble, and then all of the other clauses regarding indigenous community was also removed. And we all know, when we're talking about intersectionality, children in indigenous community will be totally totally be affected by this hesitation and ambiguity regarding indigenous community insertion in the draft. And then there's also thickening of private sector responsibility regarding environmental rights. Also, the issue on environmental impact assessment and research and education was put into bracket. And we know that we've been mentioning before that environmental education is really important for children, because they have to be exposed to their environmental rights, and they have to be exposed to what's happening around us right now. But in Asian document itself right now, Asian Environmental Rights Declaration, they're still really hesitant about it. So yeah, it was still put into bracket. And then also the clause on strategic lawsuit against public participation or SLAP was also removed. As we all know, children are also part of environmental human rights defenders, and we know that all throughout the Southeast Asian countries, a lot of EHRDs are being attacked and also being sued, and also getting a lot of intimidation. And we all know that part of them are also children. So it is such a bad news for us. And then after that, number 5, I already mentioned it. And then lastly, the insertion of human rights-based approach in the issue on adaptation and mitigation for climate change was put into bracket. So meaning there was also a hesitation and doubt within the working group regarding the use of human rights-based approach. But even though we know that human rights is really has a huge interlinkage with environmental rights, one cannot live without the other. So it is such an ironic that it is being put in bracket. Yeah, so I think that's the update for the Asian Environmental Rights Declaration. We hope that we can gain more support from civil society regarding this, because we know that I think there was a lack of political will and also advancement on the updates of environmental issues within the Asian countries. There are some countries who are more hesitant to emphasize about the importance of environmental rights within the draft, including the children's rights. And ways forward, I think these are some of the things that I feel like important to be emphasized. First, we have to keep pushing about the narratives on inclusion of children as vulnerable groups in Asian discourse, planning, and documents. And also we have to identify problems and risks that are exposed to children in a segregated manner of data collecting, Therefore, it can be manifested in a comprehensive and detailed guidelines, policies, and regulations. Also, we have to keep using intersectionality approach in tackling the issues suffered by vulnerable groups, and then escalate the importance of addressing environmental risks faced by children in Asian communities, and also strengthening governmental institutions, political will, and priorities to address children's environmental rights. And last but not least, to emphasize the importance of environmental education for youth and children. I think that's all from me. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Prilly. Thank you so much. I also have to mention that IPEN submitted our comments on the ASEAN Declaration on Environmental Rights. Hopefully, it will also be considered. You've mentioned a lot of efforts that ISEL has been doing in really engaging in and also contributing the ASEAN Declaration on Environmental Rights. So hopefully we wish you success in the next meeting. But of course, the importance of really ensuring that the declaration will be doable, viable, and also will be implemented, strictly implemented. So thank you again, Prilly, and everyone. As much as we want to extend more, because we are already running out of time, so I'm sharing with you my email address. If you have questions or clarifications with our speakers, please feel free to send your questions or clarifications to me, and then I will share it with our speakers for them to answer, and I will also share it with you. So sorry, we will not have the Q&A now, but today has been a very great learning experience for me. I think one of the major beneficiaries of all the learning, the information that our speakers shared today. Thank you so much. And I salute all our speakers for all their knowledge and expertise that they have shared with us. And I promise that we will have a discussion on ways forward, but I think that this will not be just one webinar that we'll be organizing, because the issue of in children's environmental rights is one of the important issues that IPEN participating organization in Southeast and East Asia is working on, and we will for sure we will continue this similar discussions in the future. And our ways forward, one, of course, we've heard about the global conventions, global policy frameworks recognizing children's environmental rights, and I think it is important for us to understand more about them, and then know if they are really strictly implemented, if our countries are adopting those international conventions, and also if they are strictly also adopted in our respective countries. And also, second one is that we are challenged to help strengthen the awareness of our fellow civil society organizations, and also our government, including the private and also the business industry, to take care, to ensure that they are implementing mitigating measures in order to ensure the protection of children from all the impacts of pollutants, toxic chemicals in their businesses or in the communities where they are operating. And that also that the government is doing their work, the duty bearers are also doing their work appropriately to protect the children. And we're challenged to continue promote the children's rights in our respective countries, and also advocate to ensure that children's environmental rights in the ASEAN and other regions will not be remain in texts, but will also be implemented and contribute to it, no, in the implementation. So for now, we will move on. We will end this webinar, hoping that we will have a strengthened collaboration with all the organizers. And also we will be able to collectively work together in the future. So thank you so much, everyone. So that's all we have now, and I have to say bye everyone, and thank you so much again to all our speakers and co-organizers. Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Chinky.
Chinky.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, bye
Dadah,
everyone.
Nina. Thank you, Amihan.
Thank you.